First of all, it's important for people to understand that insurance is highly regulated at the state level for both market conduct and solvency. What that means is every policy that is sold in the United States by a company has to be pre-approved, or that policy form has to be approved by state regulators as to what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And it's clear in business interruption coverage, which is a part of a broader property insurance policy form, that virus and bacterial-related events are not covered under business interruption. That's exactly why several weeks ago the National Association of Insurance Commissioners came out with a very strong statement that said that these pandemic claims are not covered under standard business insurance interruption policies.
But don't you have more bills in more than a half a dozen states that looking at requiring you to actually cover these business disruption losses?
There are a number of bills that are being talked about in the states. I think the only one that has actually been introduced as a piece of legislation is in New Jersey, that purport to require mandatory retroactive coverage for what's clearly not covered in standard insurance policies. You know, I would say that once upon a time in America, there was a law that prevented retroactive laws from being passed. That was called the Constitution of the United States. But clearly, there are many legislators that have forgotten about that.
David, do no restaurants have any clauses in their insurance policies that could be argued to potentially cover this? I get that clearly a pandemic specifically is not something that appeared in many policies, but what about broad policies for protection against health crises of some sort?
Well, remember, business interruption insurance is a property insurance coverage. And the reason that businesses are shut down is not because of damage to property. It's for fear of human-to-human transmission of a communicable disease. That's not a property insurance claim. Now, I'm sure that there are going to be some very enterprising plaintiffs' lawyers out there that are going to try to expand coverage. That's what they always do. But exploiting this crisis with litigation profiteering will stop America's recovery even before it starts, and is not the way to get assistance to businesses in this time of crisis. We as an industry are very supportive of federal government intervention and support to inject liquidity into America's small businesses. This is a disaster of a proportion that only the federal government can deal with.
David, I get your point about retroactive legislation. If there are terms that were set and they weren't met, I can see the argument. What about going forward? I presume you accept that the type of insurance policies a lot of these restaurateurs took out was to protect them against a wildcard threat to their business, albeit annoying for them. It wasn't included in the policy. Going forward, would you adapt the policy for free at no extra cost to now include this sort of thing were it to happen again?
No, pandemics are uninsured events because they are uninsurable events. What I mean by that is a pandemic by its very nature hits globally all at one time, and it hits all businesses at once. There is no way that an insurer or even global reinsurers can diversify their risk in the midst of a pandemic. Do there need to be public policy solutions going forward so that we don't have this haphazard approach that we're seeing right now with the Small Business Assistance Program that is constantly running out of money after just a couple of weeks? Yes, but that's going to have to be a federal program to deal with something of the magnitude of a pandemic.
So, David, it's not clear who you're saying should cover the losses. If I'm a small business restaurant owner and I've been paying, my insurance company for disaster business interruption insurance and this doesn't qualify, then what am I going to do?
Well, first of all, insurers have paid out over the last 5 years $1.8 trillion for all property casualty claims, $140+ billion for claims in major commercial property lines for the ongoing type of natural disasters that occur out there, as well as physical damage to commercial property, such as caused by a fire in a restaurant kitchen. You know, I would also point out that only 30% at the highest level, only 30% of all small businesses in the United States even buy any kind of business interruption policies. And so this is not a widespread solution for the current crisis that we find ourselves in. But it goes back to a basic premise for business interruption coverage, which is damage to physical property. And that's not what we're experiencing right now. Businesses are not closed because they've been damaged by storm, water, hail, underlying physical damage to property. They're closed because of fear of human-to-human transmission of a highly communicable disease.